He blinked his eyes. He stared at the ceiling. He took a deep breath. When his vision of eyesight cleared, he turned to his right side. He saw you there, on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm, another arm around your waist. You were sleeping. Ryan? He called your name, trying to wake you up, but you didn't move. You were still sleeping, resting peacefully on his shoulder. He smiled, gently, at how calm you looked. After a few minutes, he carefully pulled his arm away from you. No one wanted to disturb you. Slowly, he got up from the bed, trying not to make any noise. He stood, stretching his arms, and glancing back at you one more time before he went inside the bathroom. After getting fresh, he came back. While putting on his clothes, he unbuttoned his shirt, glancing over at you. As he looked at you, a thought crossed his mind. You seemed a bit off, like you're not feeling well. What happened to you? He took a deep breath. He walked to where you were still sleeping. He stood there for a moment. He stared at you. Then he gently brushed a strain of hairs away from your face. I hope you're okay, he whispered softly. He knew you need rest, so he decided to let you sleep a little longer, hoping that when you wake up, you would feel better. Then Jungkook quickly finished getting dressed and left the room, but his mind still on you. This marriage was not like others. It was a contract arranged by their family, and due to family pressure, they had to marry, even though they didn't want to. So they make an contract. The agreement was clear their marriage would last only for a few months. When that contract was over, they would go to their separate ways. They didn't let themselves get too close, because they know that soon it would all be over. You slowly woke up and looked around, noticed that Jungkook had already left. You sat up and tried to get up, but suddenly you felt like to and you quickly rushed to the bathroom. After a few minutes later, you came back to the room. You thought about texting Jungkook to let him know what happened, but when you check your phone, you realize you didn't have to disturb him. He might be busy. I didn't have to worry him. You looked around and muttered to yourself, I guess I'll go to the doctor. I don't want to bother him for something so small. After a few minutes, you grab your things and prepare to leave for the doctor on your own. You arrived at the doctor's office. After waiting for a while, you were finally called in. You walked into the room and sat on the chair, nervously glancing around, and the doctor, a kind of woman in her late 30s, smiled at you as she entered. Hello, how can I help you today? She asked. Her voice was gentle. You took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I have been feeling sick. I don't know why. I thought it was just something small, but I thought I should get checked. The doctor nodded. Alright, we run few tests to see what's going on. Let's start with a simple checkup. She did a few routine checks and asked you about your symptoms, then left the room for a moment to prepare something. When she came back, she had a small test kit in her hand. Let's do a quick test to be sure about this. You nodded, still not knowing what was happening. After a few minutes passed as the doctor examined the results, she looked at you carefully. I have the results, she said, sitting down in the front of you. It looks like you are The word hit you like a wave. You frozen for a moment. You process what she had just said. Flashback few weeks ago. Jungkook came home late. When he walked in, you could tell he was. But he smiled when he saw you. I missed you. You smiled back, and you could sense something was different about him. He was usually more careful, but tonight he was different. He sat down next to you on the couch. Then, without warning you, it was soft at first and then a little more intense. You tried to pull back, but he pulled you closer. His hand gently held your face. Stay with me, he whispered. You didn't know what to say. You want it, and he want that too. That night things happened. It was messy. It was not planned. The next morning, Jungkook woke up with a headache. He thought he didn't remember about that, whatever happened that night, so you didn't tell him. You said nothing happened, and now? You know, you had to talk to Jungkook about this, but you couldn't shake the fear of what might happen, and how will you tell him about that night? What if he didn't accept this child as his? What if something else happened? What will you do? You decide to go to his office to tell him because you don't want to hide this from him. When you arrived, you went to his office, but you saw something that made your heart drop. Jungkook's ex was sitting in the front of him in his office, and they were talking as if everything was perfect, fine between them. This scene in the front of you made your stomach twisted in pain. Without saying a word, you turned and quietly left the office, your heart aching. You arrived at home. You slammed the door behind you. You could feel the tears in your eyes. You whispered to yourself between sobs, "Hi, Jungkook." You sat on the bed, hugging your knees. I'm scared. What if he doesn't want this? What if he doesn't want me? Why he was with her? Jungkook came home late, his footstep heavy as he entered the apartment. The first thing he noticed how puffy your eyes were, the sign of tears still fresh on your face. He paused. Ryan, he called softly. What happened? You didn't answer, and you turned your head away from him, pretending like you didn't hear him. He frowned. Jungkook walked to you and gently grabbed your hand, pulling you closer. Ryan, talk to me. What's wrong? This time tears fell from your eyes. You couldn't hold it back. You started crying, your voice shaky with emotions. Jungkook's eyes were in shock. He stood frozen for a moment, and then he cupped your face in his hands. Wait, what? Why didn't you tell me before? I'm going to be dad. I can't believe I'm so happy. You blinked in confusion. You thought he would ask you, but he remembered everything about that night. You remember that? I remember everything. Then why you were still with your ex? I saw her in your office with you today. When she just came to my office because we had a project together. Nothing more. I swear I don't feel anything for her anymore. You stared at him. Ryan, I'm so happy. I can't believe I'm going to be a dad. We both married a contract, but I want to be with you. I want to be here with you. And this baby, I'm sorry for making you feel like this way, for making you doubt at me. But I'm sorry. I'm not going anywhere. I want to break this contract. Your chest felt heavy. You hugged him. You could feel his warmth, his love. I was scared. I want to be with you too. He pecked on your forehead.